Hey everyone, I'm Tom. Welcome to the channel. Let's talk about 2026 reading goals. I quickly looked over some of my goals from 2025 and I was actually really impressed. I pretty much accomplished everything I wanted to for 2025 except for two things, which I will mention in here because surprise, surprise, they are on the 2026 list and they are going to get done this year, or as close to done as they can be. Let's go ahead and start off with the big one. How many books do I plan on reading in 2026? And I believe this isn't even a reduction from last year. I think last year I said 45. And this year I'm going to have 40 as the number. I think 40 will be a very easy number for me to hit. But I want to give myself that room that if I read some stuff that takes a really long time, or I think this year I might try to read some things more physically, and I'm just much slower at that I give myself that goal. Obviously, very arbitrary. It doesn't really matter. I think a lot of us here in the booktube space have kind of almost abandoned this kind of goal. But I do like just having that because it does help me stay away from doom scrolling on the internet, knowing that like, hey, I have this like loose goal, but in the end, this isn't something that's going to like make or break my year for me. I don't really care too much about the number. I really care about the quality of stuff that I read at this point. But you know, it is still fun to have a number. I am still somebody who is a numbers person. You've probably heard about my infamous spreadsheet where I rank all of my books and everything. Like I do still enjoy that aspect of it, but the more I read, the less I care about how much I read, if that makes any sense. It is at this point a habit and something that I just do and it happens. And I normally end up getting a decent amount of reading done. Now, the biggest thing that is going to be on this list this year is going to be I'm going to be open to the idea of a reread. If you're new here or you haven't been around the channel a whole lot, I don't reread. There is one exception to that rule. Every year, Christmas Eve, I reread A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Outside of that, since I started reading again in 2019, and actually even before this, I never reread books. Ever, never, never, never. It always just seemed like, I don't want to say it seemed like a waste of time to me, because that's not true. It's not a waste of time to reread stuff, but I think a little piece of my mind thought that. And so I've always just stayed away from rereads. And as I've read more and more, and gotten further away from some things that I've read and really enjoyed, the idea of a reread, I think, is something I need to just try to be a little bit more open about. Specifically, the series that made me kind of really think about this is A Song of Ice and Fire. It's been even longer since I've read, especially A Game of Thrones. I think I read A Game of Thrones. It would have had to have been 2012 or something like that. I was still in high school. So like, but before I graduated high school, I think I was probably a sophomore or junior in high school and technically that's when I finished A Storm of Swords. Is that book 3? A Storm of Swords? Something like, no, yes, maybe, no. It doesn't matter, but whenever, I think that's the book I read when I was like, so it's been even earlier since actually A Game of Thrones. And it's one of those ones where I've been thinking of finally doing my like top 10 series list, some of those big ones that I probably should have done at this point in doing BookTube. And I'm like, I don't think I could put that, don't think I could justify putting that on my list because I read it so long ago that so much of the finer details are gone. And the most recent content I've consumed from that series is the TV show. So, because I watched that way after season 8 happened. Like I watched it well after the fact. So I don't know. That's one of the things that makes me kind of curious. Part of me is like, do I want to go back and reread my favorite series of all time? I don't know. It's one of those things. The main reason I never have is like I'm always so worried I'm going to go back and not like something. So we'll see. But that is definitely something that is kind of on the docket, is to be open to the idea of a reread. Not that I reread, that I'm open to the idea, because I think that's the first step. And maybe next year I'll actually do a reread. We'll see. I'm very on the fence about it. But with those 40 books, I would like 2 of them. This is a bump up from last year. Last year was just 1. This year it's 2. And partially because the 2 that I have planned, one of them is very, very short. But I want to read 2 nonfiction this year, and one of them is Hannibal by Philip Freeman, and the other one is Philip and Alexander by Philip Freeman. These are obviously like Roman era stories to a certain extent. I read Julius, or is it just Caesar, or is it Julius Caesar? I think it's Julius Caesar by Philip Freeman in 2025 and enjoyed it. And so, you know, just kind of expanding that a little bit. And there's also maybe the possibility of reading some stuff about Chernobyl. I watched the miniseries last year and was just blown away by the story. I found it to be like really interesting, and I think there are some really good firsthand account stories out there about it. And so that might be something that I go ahead and look into a little bit as well. Continuing on that reading front, I definitely want to keep going with my comic reading. That is something that really came alive in 2025. And I don't want that to go away. This is going to be my next comic read. This is Kingdom Come, very, very famous DC story with some like super famous artwork. Like a lot of the artwork you'll see online is from Alex Ross. So that'll be super cool. Some other ones that are a little bit of a higher priority is Invincible. I'm about halfway through the second compendium of that, so obviously I still have a lot left. I would really like to do that. Part of me would like to go and do The Walking Dead. That's another one. I have some other DC stuff on the shelf as well that I would like to do. And so yeah, there's just a bunch of comic stuff. And in the same vein, and I think I said the same thing last year, is I think last year I said be more consistent with my manga reading, because at that time I was still reading manga, and I really abandoned manga in 2025. So I was consistent in that I didn't read it. And this year, I think I just kind of want to commit to maybe one or two series that I'm interested in, and just read those sporadically throughout the year. The main ones I think are going to be Freerun Beyond Journey's End and Mobile Suit Gundam Origins is what it is. I already read the first one of that. My library has them all, so it's very easy for me to get a hold of them, to read them and everything. And I also just love like mech stuff in general. I'm watching a Gundam series right now, and so reading it at the same time. And it's like a very classic like story and anime. I think technically the anime was first in this instance, which isn't always the case when it comes to manga and everything. And so that is that. I definitely do want to, figure out my manga situation. I don't have all the subscriptions that I had in the past, so I think I'm going to really try to rely on the library for manga and stuff, which, is a good thing anyway. Continuing on with the reading is I am committed to a few short story things this year. In 2025, I read a lot of shorter stuff than I had in the past, and I really started to enjoy it. It's not something I'd ever enjoyed in the past, and so now I think is the time to continue on and really lean into that. So I know Jake over at Nerd Level Rising, he is doing a read along for the Conan the Barbarian. I think we're going to do all of the short stories and everything. So I am jumping on that. It's there's a thread for it in our Discord if you want to come join. It's free, all of that fun stuff. You can come and see all the shenanigans that happen in there. And if you are interested in Conan the Barbarian, we'll be talking about the stories. We're doing one a week, so it's like super slow paced. Like the first one was like, I don't know if it was even 20, 25 pages. It was super, super short. And so it's not a huge commitment at one a week. So that'll be super great. And then the other short story collection that I'm definitely want to get into is this. This is all of Ernest Hemingway's short stories. Hemingway is one of my favorite writers of all time, and I've never read any of his short stories, which is, that feels like a mistake. I feel like he's almost better known for his short story writing than some of his novels. I feel like, obviously, very famous writer for me to say that, but I don't know. I feel like I hear so much about his short story collection, or not collections, just his short stories in general, that I'm very excited to get into this collection at some point. And then I know Stephen King has a bunch of short stuff as well, and he has a bunch of different collections. I know his most recent one, You Like It Darker, came out, what was that, 2 years ago, 3 years ago at this point? So maybe I would want to get into that as well, because I really enjoy King at this point. Now we get to the point where I have to talk about the failures that I had in 2025, and this goal is the same from last year, and it is to make significant progress on my two long-running fantasy series. Those would be Malazan Book of the Fallen by Steven Erikson and The Wars of Light and Shadow by Janny Wirtz. Okay. So Malazan has been an interesting journey for me. I didn't really like book 4, and that's really what slowed me down. And basically it's been over a year since I read that last book, but I'm very excited to get to Midnight Tides. Midnight Tides will be the next book that I read once I finish my current read, and I'm excited, which I think I waited a little bit longer than I wanted to, because I was starting to get in this mood. I was like, I want to get back to it. And I said, let's hold off, make sure you really actually want to get back to it. And I still really want to get back to it, so I'm very much excited for that. And then I'm still currently in the middle of reading some of Janny's stuff. I read a lot from her last year, actually. I read all of the short stuff I could. I read Sorcerer's Legacy by her. So like I was still reading Janny Wirtz, because she is definitely one of my favorite writers as well. It's just The Wars of Light and Shadow, because I have to physically read them, just takes me so much longer. I'm really bad about making time to physically read. And so that's something I can be better about this year as well. But that will help me make progress in this series. If I could finish both of these series in 2026, that would be massive for me, because I also want to add in another series. Now this is a sci-fi series, and I would really like to start Red Rising this year as well. Super popular. I'd really like to time it out, kind of like I did with Sun Eater, with Red God maybe coming out, which it sounds less and less likely as time goes on that that's going to be the case. But if I could somehow get to Red God with not having to wait a long time like everyone else has had, That would be fantastic. So that's another one that kind of sneaks in here as well. So now we're in the home stretch. These are just some kind of, random goals. These aren't necessarily 100% related to reading, even though they definitely are. The main one being get back to using the library more. I already mentioned the library a couple times throughout this video, specifically with manga and stuff, but the library has plenty of resources. I don't need to be buying a bunch of random books that I don't really need. The library, I can get them from there most of the time. And so I was really good about that early on in 2025. And I just, need to get kind of back into rhythm. In the second half of the year, I think I kind of went on a hot streak of like not being able to get the stuff I wanted from the library. And it just kind of like, I forgot to go back to it. And so I just need to do that. I want to keep making my individual, little book covers that I do. I had a lot of fun with that in 2025, and I think it is a very unique thing to me. I don't know anyone else who is doing that. I actually got Christopher Rocchio to sign all of the ones I did for Sun Eater, which is just like a super crazy thing that I don't know. I get a lot of joy out of it. I think it's funny. I try to make them kind of funny and creative, but this is because I'm mostly an audiobook listener, so this gives me something to hold up in videos, and I don't know, it's just fun at this point. I think people enjoy it for the most part. And then to finish it off is to just, keep being involved in the Discord. If you don't know, I'm in the Book Street Boys Discord. There are 10 channels in there. I say it that way because one channel is more than one person, but I'm in there a decent amount. I try to be involved. It's a lot, or Discord in general is a lot for me. It's not my favorite thing to like be paying attention to, but I try to be in there being active and all of that fun stuff. And obviously there's a lot of other people in there, so it's not just about me, which is great, because if I kind of fall off for a little bit, somebody else probably is doing something, and we kind of ebb and flow all together. And it's this really great thing we've got going on. Obviously there's a podcast that's associated with it. We do it, it's not on a consistent cadence because it depends on when people are available and everything, but it is also a lot of fun. And just, growing that community and everything is great. So those are my light goals. You can see I don't really have too many crazy things for 2026. One thing I wanted to be better about is not like overextending, especially in this sphere, because this is just like a fun hobby. So I didn't want to do anything that's too crazy. If I go above and beyond all of this, that's fantastic. That's great. That's the point. These goals are supposed to be minimums. If I can go above and beyond, that would be fantastic. But definitely let me know what your goals are for 2026 down below in the comments, all of that fun stuff. And remember, read what you want when you want.